John, there's a question for you, or there's a few that have popped in. So let's try and field these in order. Martin Greenland, question for John. How are architects using data to inform changes in terms of design and build to rent? It's quite a broad question, but do you want to have a go at that?
The first bit of data that we had when we were beginning on the build to rent journey was from a client of ours, UDR in the US, that had about 150,000 units, and theirs was, and this has been a long told stat, which was 50% of residents would renew their lease if they knew one person in the building, and 90% of their residents would renew their lease if they knew two or more people. So that was a piece of data which suddenly enabled everyone to understand that creating community and spaces where people could make friends, etc., was not just a nice to have. Wouldn't it be good if, wouldn't we be wonderful providers of homes if we did that? It's, you know, it's becoming a commercial decision, right? The leases are there's less voids, there's less operational costs if you can keep people in the buildings. And I think, you know, that's the first bit of data we began to use and mull over. And now we're at a point where we have lots of computational design tools and parametric tools which help us design the buildings to be the most you know, orientated in the best way. And I call it the Lego program, where we can put the Lego blocks inside the volume, and it moves them all around until it's in the most optimum place to get the most views of the landscape, or of the, you know, most close, put the closest number of people to the amenity, etc. And we can do use lots of data for that. What I'm quite interested in is how we're going to use the consumer data and the feedback data that you're gathering for this to, you know, in a parametric way. How can we begin to feel that we've got tools which we can use when we're designing buildings, which we can say, yes, that is going to deserve a best customer service. And I'll take, you know, Ian and Matt's point is all, you know, and I completely take this on board, that, you know, the design is kind of done when we've drawn it, and before it's even in the ground, you know, it's up to the operators and the teams operating these buildings to make sure the customer service is as good as it can be. But the data needs to inform the design enough to give them the very best chance to create the very best building and the very best customer service within those buildings.
I think all I'd add to that for Martin is we have multiple use cases of when, you know, particularly in VE discussions, but in the design proposal discussions, validating a decision for an amenity, a particular amenity or a feature or a layout of a flat, can be validated by looking at the best-in-class examples that do utilize that. In fact, people talk about it frequently, and that's one of the features of Pro, is that you're able to look at how frequently certain features of a building are mentioned, positively or negatively, and really correlate that to the design decisions you're implementing moving forward.
Everyone can understand a very defined metric like cost, right? So a balcony costs this. We always ask, you know, how much is the balcony going to make in value? And it's like, now we're beginning to get data that people want that stuff. So, you know, that's where you know, it's less binary than a cost conversation, but it's much more rich and long term in how it's going to benefit the building as a whole.
I think that's an incredibly key point. That is that, you know, traditionally when we were producing and procuring residential projects, they were capital projects, and once the capital was spent, it was over.
Yeah.
These are not capital projects; these are revenue projects. And actually, you know, the validation of the VE question, where somebody says, "Look, can we take out the multimedia room that, you know, you might call it a cinema room or whatever it is?" And you go, well, we have real evidence that people want this and will use it. And actually it supports the rental projections that we've got. And by the way, you know, a balcony, you know, might cost you £500 to put on the side of the building, but will earn you, you know, £25,000 in GDV per annum in rental income. So all of a sudden, those two things are, you know, correlate very quickly. And, you know, I think that it's extremely helpful to have the data now to go back to a design team or a cost consultant or a client and say, don't make this decision. It's a bad decision. It will affect your revenue, you know.
I think just for everyone who joined later, as part of HomeViews Pro, we are ingesting and researching all asking prices for build to rent buildings in the UK that we have reviews on. So you can correlate a resident experience by asking price for 1, 2, and 3, and really explain that there is that premium available if you do, you know, design in that certain feature. Question from Richard Daw.